6:38 in the morning. Want to optimize our time with Ted Kefalas of Grassroot Institute of Hawaii. And Ted, I want to welcome you. Good morning.
Hey, Rick. Always great to spend some time in the mornings with you.
Share us once again, as you do. Tell us about Grassroot Institute, and we'll jump into topicality soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Grassroot Institute, we're a local nonprofit think tank based here in Honolulu, and we're really focused on lowering the cost of living and holding the government accountable. Two things that I think most people can kind of get behind. And, it seems like there's constantly things that we can do here as a government and as a community to lower the cost of living and make sure that we're holding our elected leaders accountable. So we are a group that's completely independent. We don't take donations from political figures or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So we like to make sure that we're kind of the watchdog, if you will, for the state, because we are completely independent. And for folks that don't know too much about us, if you want to check us out, our website is grassrootinstitute.org.
Yesterday, opening day officially. It is a 60 workday calendar, and I'd like to get your take. Ted, what transpired yesterday, your impression of the first day?
Yeah, I mean, the first day, you got to kind of think back to college almost, where it's like a syllabus day. Not a ton gets done. It's a lot of congratulations, a lot of lays are being passed around. And it's an opportunity for folks to just come in and say hello to the legislators. But that being said, it does set up a very interesting session this year, I think. And when you think about all that happened with Lahaina, I think that's going to be the dominating topic this year. But that being said, we can't take our eye off the ball when it comes to other issues. I mean, we've been dealing with an affordable housing crisis for decades. We are dealing with a lack of healthcare access. We have so many other issues in addition to having to respond to Lahaina that I think it's important that the legislature make sure that they don't get too distracted by what's going on while still being able to help the victims of that situation.
What particular bills are on your radar?
I think for us at Grassroot, number one, we're looking at housing. We talk about lowering the cost of living. All too often, the number one cost for people is their mortgage or their rent. And so trying to introduce bills that would allow for smaller, more workforce-related homes, so more targeted towards our local community. Right now, there's each county has minimum lot size requirements. And that means that in order to build a single-family home, you have to have X number of square feet. So on Maui, for example, it's 6,000 square feet. Well, what kind of a home do you think is going to get built on 6,000 square feet of land? It's going to be a pretty big home. They're not going to put a little 1,000, 1,500 square foot home on that land. So as a result, you're seeing all of these kind of McMansions getting built, and it's driving the prices up. 2/3 of the cost of a home is tied up in the land. So in theory, by being able to, reduce that amount of land, you'll be able to reduce the price. So that's number one for us. But on that same note, we're also looking at a few other bills that one would allow or would require counties to allow self-certification when it comes to permitting. We've seen the permitting backlogs when it comes to the counties, and especially in Honolulu. And so this would require the counties to allow architects and engineers to actually self-certify their plans. They don't have to go through the permitting department. And it would actually speed up the process. You're just taking people out of line and allowing them to say, okay, this plan is good. Now that doesn't.
We had that initiative at the city council. It was submitted. What's the status of that?
So that it is allowed. It did pass, but it has a sunset. And so this would require all the counties to do something similar, but would not have a sunset, and would allow the architects and engineers to continue to self-certify plans.
What's the current sunset for Honolulu?
I believe it's 5 years.
Okay. And have we seen any impact, any facilitation benefits from this bill that passed?
It's a little too early to tell, to be honest, Rick. I know that there were some smaller self-certification programs previously that a lot of the industry really liked. And again, this isn't something that's allowing them to skirt past inspections and things like that. That's the real key. You can allow a plan to be permitted, but then if the folks on the ground building the home don't follow the plan and it's not inspected, well, then what good was the permitting process? So to me, the inspections is actually going to be key rather than dealing with upfront the permitting and the plans like that. But then also looking at healthcare. We talk about healthcare access all the time. And how can we get more providers here in Hawaii?
How do we?
Well, last year we were able to work with the legislature and pass the Interstate Medical Licensure Compact.
Yes.
So we're going to be able to bring physicians into Hawaii from other states. But let's look at other compacts. There are so many other medical professionals that are not doctors. You look at nurses, APRNs, physical therapists, occupational therapists. The list goes on. And there's compacts for all of these professions. And so, for us as a state, in order to recruit these individuals, we're going to have to join these compacts and make it as easy as possible for people to come and move here.
But they move here, they have the highest cost of living. And although they may be remunerated more on average than other professionals, they're subjected to the same stuff that we have to deal with as locals. Is there anything on the agenda that you can see or support that will alleviate our cost of living?
Yeah, I think, and small chunks, right? And this is something that it was a bill that was proposed last year, got all the way up to the finish line. And specifically for providers, it would eliminate the GET for Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE. So why that's important is right now you have these individuals that come to the doctor's office, and it's a large percent of our population, right? Well, doctors cannot pass on the GET to those individuals that are on Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE. So as a result, the doctors are having to eat that cost. And it's eating into their bottom line. And essentially a lot of them are saying we can't make it here. So, the licensure compact is great, but we also have to take a kind of a full circle approach and look at things like removing the GET from those items like Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE, and then potentially looking further and getting rid of the GET as a whole.
Well, that's kind of bearing the lead, because the elimination of the GET and the restoration of credits that were previous should be top of mind. It's like when we talk about Jones Act, we need to eliminate it. Well, maybe not. Let's go ahead and get exemptions that make sense. And if we don't eliminate GET, we return to a time where you're not taxed because you eat. You're not taxed because you get sick. You're not taxed because you have a home. And when that was stripped away, that was a profound moment. But that's taken us back almost 30 years,
right,
that it's been in that way. Governor Green proposed in the first go-round, exempt GET, that there was going to be an alleviation in the amount, an exemption, etc. But we haven't received any word on that again. And I'll get it back to you in a second. I'm fearful that the invocation of Maui is going to include the clarity that we require in all the other issues that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think, unfortunately, Maui is going to, like I said, dominate the session. But I think a lot of lawmakers are probably going to use that as an excuse as to why they can't lower any taxes. And especially,
and justify increases.
Right. I don't think the GET is going to go away. Let me be straight. I don't think that that's really on the table for the next few years, especially with Lahaina. But, looking at some of those exemptions to try to chip away at it. But to your point, I do think there's going to be a question of how we pay for a lot of this stuff, whether it's how we're going to house victims long term, how we're going to rebuild. There's a lot of question marks still. And to be honest, that's going to impact the budget for years to come. This isn't just a one-shot deal. This is going to be something that we probably talk about for years.
And we've already subscribed to that and accepted it. However, it's just the reality, because we screw everything up. Let's just be honest. You have anything of major size, construction, public project, it's a mess.
Right.
We have the stadium, which is son of rail, and now, let me get to the point, though. The private sector raised, do we have an idea? The total amount of dollars that were raised, private sector, for wildfire survivors and more, and secondarily, up until this point, how much revenue has been dispersed or encumbered by any level of government that is directed to Maui? Do you know?
And I do not know offhand, but
right.
I think that you're exactly right. We've talked about this previously. Is there's going to need to be an audit somehow in the future of the money that's being brought in from the federal government, the state government, as well as the local government.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at groups like the Red Cross, you look at groups like FEMA, you look at Hawaii Community Foundation. There's a lot of money coming into Maui, but a lot of those folks on the beaches are not seeing that money. And so, I think that as the dust continues to settle, there is going to need to be a call for some accountability and some transparency as to where that money is being spent and how it's really helping folks.
So I think we're past the point of where we have to talk about it, because right now I have notes and identify people on Maui that are survivors. They feel like they're forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like done.
Right.
The window is done.
Right.
Still cannot get a place to stay. If they do, subjected by some landlords that are pernicious in their stewardship, they'll raise $3,000 per month for a tiny which is above exploitative, because government will pay that amount, and being unreasonable and reneging on agreements. And so our friends that we invoked, that we cited, this is where your donation is going to help. We're going to help these people, these folks. We're not.
Yeah, I think it's critical to understand that a lot of times policy outcomes don't care about intentions. And so we can be very well intentioned, but I'm assuming you were referencing the Civil Beat article the other day, where you saw where Lahaina renters are actually being forced out of their current rental units in favor of Lahaina victims, because the government's going to be paying a huge sum. They don't have to worry about folks not paying, and it's probably 3-4 times what they were making previously. Plus, not to mention, they can look for an exemption now from their property taxes. So there's a huge incentive to house Lahaina victims, and I'm not saying that that's a terrible thing, but we also have to keep in mind there's tons of other people on Maui that are feeling the ramifications of this, and so we have to be mindful of all of the potential outcomes when we look at these things.
Talking with Ted Kefalas of Grassroot Institute. Ted, I'm going to need how much time here? 2 minutes. Take a short break. When we come back, and we've already touched on the first topic, so we'll do our best to have it even more so in a moment. Stand by. There's more with Grassroot Institute of Hawaii. News Radio 830 KHVH with Ted Kefalas of Grassroot. Ted, I know there's a myriad of different things that are taking place. So we'll go into bullet point mode, if that's all right.
Yeah,
So much.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Here we go. I might even put some music behind it. Here we go. Kona Airport cracks. Really?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they read about the cracks, and for some that didn't see, there was a third crack that appeared on Tuesday. So, this speaks to a larger issue, though. Senator Lorraine Inouye, and I want to give her a shout out, because she's tried for years to create a semi-independent airport corporation. This isn't just Kona. A 2022 study found Honolulu and Maui were the second worst airports. Honolulu was the second worst largest airport, and Maui was the second, I think it was mid-sized airport. But that's huge because the airports are crucial to our economy. Think about it. Tourism is number one. And when a tourist comes in, that's their first impression. And so, to be honest, a lot of our facilities are kind of second rate. And, they resemble that of a developing country. So I think it's not just Kona. We're going to have to look at our airports as a whole.
Also, we have on the agenda is not only the legislative session, but I want to ask you a simple, maybe not so question. We have our elected officials. They have their roles and responsibility. In your mind, who truly is the most influential person or organization in our state?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I think, there is a lot, but I think number 1 and number 1A and 1B would probably be the Speaker and Senate President, just from the standpoint that they're the ones that can dole out the committee leadership. And so that is how bills get determined. Whether a bill gets heard, whether a bill moves forward, how that bill is amended is all dependent on committee leadership. A lot of times you'll see they come in with recommendations, and a lot of the other committee members don't even know what the recommendations are, but they vote for them regardless. So, to be honest, having the power to be able to assign those leadership positions is a huge feather in their cap, to be able to hold that over their fellow legislators.
So who has the most power and influence over those individuals?
That's an interesting question, and one that I don't know the answer to. I think there's a lot of special interest, but I think number 1, too, is the voters. I think that those individuals know that their voters come first, and I do know I'm actually Speaker Psyche's constituent, so maybe I'm a little biased here, but I do know that he is a great steward to the community and has community meetings often, trying to keep people informed. But it's about getting people involved. And so all too often, they'll hear from 3-4 people in their district, and they think that makes up the majority. But in reality, it's a vocal minority. And so if there is an issue that you feel passionate about, you really need to get involved and let your legislators know.
I'll take it a step further. It is organized labor. And secondarily, if you take a look at any major appropriation, Department of Hawaiian Homelands, Stadium Authority projects, this, that, and the other, whoever is benefiting from those, they're the ones that have tremendous influence and power. And I appreciate, you're right, when we look at the logistical aspects of government, spot on. But I'm interested in who can get the ears and the signatures that authorize these major expenditures too, totaling over $1 billion. Department of Hawaiian Homelands and the Stadium, not authority per se, but the development HUI. How do you get that done? How do you have the weight and the power to get over $1 billion to projects in 1 year?
Yeah, well, make no mistake about it. I mean, number one, the first word that comes from organized labor is organized, and they are organized. And so I think, too, that it really plays into that voter aspect, because they go in and they say, we have 30,000 members or however many members, and if you don't vote X way on this bill, then we're going to vote you out of office.
And I've maintained for 30 years, there's more of us than there is of them.
Exactly.
And getting the individuals online and involved. 10 seconds, how do we connect?
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. Visit us at grassrootinstitute.org. We are also on Instagram and YouTube for up-to-the-minute information.
Thank you very much, Ted Kefalas.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.